Welcome to the Pretty Powerful Podcast, where powerful women are interviewed every week to share real inspiring stories and incredible insight to help women or anyone break the barriers, be a part of innovation, shatter the glass ceiling, and dominate to the top of their sport, industry, or life's mission. Join us as we celebrate exceptional women and step into our power. And now, here's your host, Angela Gennari.
Hello and welcome to the Pretty Powerful Podcast. My name is Angela Gennari, and today we are speaking with Dara Rosenbaum. Thank you so much for joining us, Dara.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yes, absolutely. So let me introduce Dara real quick. Dara Rosenbaum is an attorney, business advisor, business owner, and podcast host. Dara has a passion for creating, helping, protecting, and growing her clients' companies. She is a litigator and transactional lawyer who became an attorney to help people and whose love of business owners drew her to business law. Her own experience as a business owner fuels her desire to help other businesses grow and thrive. Dara has been practicing law for over 20 years and co-founded Rosenbaum and Taylor PC over 10 years ago. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited to talk to you.
I'm excited too.
So I want to just start by saying, I think this is a really great informative podcast for our audience. And one of the things that I know people have on their mind, and one of the things that I think a lot of people are thinking about when do I start a business? How do you even start? What's the process? And, you're trying to decide, when you see all these tax forms, it becomes overwhelming. Am I an LLC? Am I an S Corp? And what's the difference? And how do I set up? And am I doing it wrong? And that's the biggest question on everybody's mind. Am I doing it wrong? Right. And so tell me how to cut through all the clutter and start figuring it out, because one of the things that I have seen online lately is a lot of these companies that say, we'll start your business, for $100, it's kind of like a business in a can. And that scares me a little bit.
Yeah.
so tell me what the proper way to get started is.
I would say don't try to do it yourself.
Yes.
So obviously, there's a lot of brainstorming that goes into it. What do you want it to look like? Who's going to be involved? Are you doing it by yourself? What does the future look like? Do you want it to grow? And all of those things kind of go into the brainstorming process. My strong suggestion is always to speak to a business attorney before you get involved with, forming the business yourself, because it's so much easier to do it right the first time than to start undoing it. If you filed the wrong forms, you selected the wrong entity, and this is all going to be, state specific and specific to the industry and specific to your personal situation. Are you going to have partners? Are you going to be an LLC and have members? Are you going to be an S Corp or a C Corp? What are the tax consequences? You want to get it right the first time. You want to set that foundation. It's like that. I think there was an old infomercial that was something about an oven. You could put everything in there and set it and forget it. Yeah. That's how I feel about setting getting the formation done correctly. Set it and forget it. Do it right the first time. Invest a little bit of money. You're not taking out a second mortgage to do this. You're not selling your family. You're not selling your kidneys. It's not that expensive to get it done right the first time, but it gives you the peace of mind to know that you've got it structured right. You've got the initial documents in place, whether that, that's going to be a filing with your, with the state. That's going to be federal filings. It's going to be specific to your location, but it's going to be specific to what you need. And the reason I don't suggest doing the, hey, we do it for $100 online is that it's not customized at all.
Right.
And it's not going to give you advice. It's going to give you a Mad Lib style, fill in the form, enter your credit card.
Yes.
It's not going to be customized to what you need. So, you're taking the time, you're making the investment in starting a business. Just do it right the first time.
I agree wholeheartedly. I've started several different businesses in my lifetime and, just getting it right. But what's hard about it is you have to kind of predict the future a little bit. You have to say, what's my end game? What's my exit strategy? And an exit strategy should be something that you keep in mind in the very beginning of your business, not just at the end of it. And so you need to know, how am I planning on, transitioning this business once I'm no longer interested in it or I've, decided to retire. And, but what happens if you are, let's just say I have this little jewelry making company. I've been doing really well with it. I just started selling it to my friends and neighbors, and all of a sudden it's blown up and now you need to restructure. Is that difficult?
It's not. I mean, I think you talk to an experienced attorney in your area who knows your area and who can learn your business.
Okay.
You don't want somebody who's just going to spit out a response without talking to you and understanding what you're doing. So
Right.
when you deal with an experienced attorney, you're talking about somebody who knows the right questions to ask.
Yeah.
Because, you're not expected as, somebody with a side hustle or somebody just starting their business or even a serial entrepreneur, you're not expected to know what questions you need to answer. You just need to have the information. So
Yeah.
work with somebody who can, learn the business, learn who you are, learn what you want, and whether that's, a jewelry making business on the side that's now blown up and you're doing it on Etsy and you're doing online commerce or you're opening up a brick and mortar, whatever you're doing, just, share with the expert who knows the business side of it, what you need, what you're planning. Are you planning on bringing in a partner? Are you going to have employees? Are you planning on buying a building? Are you leasing space? Is it only going to be online? Give all that information to somebody and, give the facts to them and let them kind of, then give you a plan or give you a suggestion or strategy.
Awesome. I love that. So I know that litigation is part of what you do. So how common do you, and this is just a question that I know a lot of business owners think about, how solid are non-competes and non-disclosures? Because, there's so many times in my business, I've had my business, we just celebrated our 7-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And so, I've definitely had my share of employees who have gone rogue and, tried to do some pretty manipulative things or who have gone to work for a direct competitor and they've signed non-disclosures and non-competes, but at the same time, I'm like, is this worth pursuing? So what advice would you give to business owners who are in those types of positions? What's worth pursuing and what's not?
Oh, and obviously what I can give here is just general advice. I can't give legal advice in this context. And obviously anybody should consult an attorney in their own jurisdiction. Right. That being said, non-competes, speaking generally, non-competes and non-disparagement or non-disclosures are sort of different animals.
Right.
So, non-competes, you're generally going to see them be, to be enforceable, be fairly specific. Right. They're generally going to be restricted geographically, and they're generally going to be restricted in time in a reasonable way so that you're not depriving somebody of their livelihood. You can't say like, well, you worked for me, so now for the next 10 years, you can't work anywhere in the U.S. doing what you do. Obviously, that's not going to work.
Right.
So the non-competes are tailored to that, and they're obviously jurisdiction specific in terms of what the states allow and what is, what's customary and what's allowable in that particular state. Non-disparagement, non-disclosure are a little bit different because you're talking about confidential information. You're talking about potentially trade secrets. So those are written a little bit differently. And I think, one of the things that is good about, putting those type of things in an agreement and having a well-drafted agreement with your employees or an employee handbook with the correct information is that it tends to dissuade people from doing things. Right. You're going to get people, listen, you're certainly going to get the unethical, unscrupulous people who are going to do something no matter what you write. Right. But there are some who are going to have a lot of pause and like, listen, let me talk to an attorney about this before I go ahead and do something I shouldn't do. Sure. Or let me not go ahead and act in an unethical way because I do have this and I might get in trouble. So I think it's always worth at least a consultation with an attorney when you're having an issue, because sometimes it doesn't need to be litigated. I mean, often it doesn't need to be litigated. Often a strongly worded letter, some sort of discussion often is enough to kind of curtail the behavior and get you back on track.
Okay, that's great advice. Yeah, because I think that's one of the worries that business owners have is, will this hold up in court? Because, as business owners, we're often told, hey, you can write anything you want. It's just not going to necessarily hold up. And so there's this constant fear as a business owner of how much can I share? How much is going to come back to me? Where can this all circle back? So that's great advice. Thank you.
And I think that how is this going to hold up in court is, several steps down the chain, because you don't want to end up in court. I mean, the way I look at it, working with small business owners and entrepreneurs and solopreneurs for 20 years is you want to be running the business. You want to be making the jewelry. You want to be doing the architecture. You want to be the structural steel engineer. You want to be, running events. You don't want to be in court. That's not your job. Right. It's not productive for you to be in court. It's not profitable. It gets expensive. It gets time consuming. It's emotionally and financially draining. So you don't want to end up in court, but you certainly want to have a document that you can point to. You can say, listen, you other side don't want to end up in court either, because we've got a really strong argument. So hopefully that's a conversation either with the party who's causing potentially, an issue with the provision and is violating the provision, or with their attorney. who can say, listen, nobody wants to go to court over this. Let's just resolve it this way. And hopefully that's a more productive way than getting to the courthouse steps, because it's not where anyone really wants to be.
Good. That's awesome. Good advice. So tell me a little bit, you have one of your talking points that I really like is you talk about finding contract language online. Is that a good way to find contract language? Because there's so many of these sites that are, legal Zoom and so forth that may have, contracts on site. Is that typically a good way for an entrepreneur to do, their initial contracting, or do you think it should be a little bit more customized to their business?
Similar answer to what we're talking about in the formation. It's you don't want something cookie cutter.
Yeah.
And listen, I completely understand. I mean, I started my own business over 10 years ago, and I've started a number of businesses and worked with hundreds of businesses over the years. I completely understand why people use online contract language. They're like, okay, hey, it's free. I can download it. I can do it myself. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's a good starting point, I think. And it could it shortcuts some of the conversation you would have with an attorney who's going to draft. Like, listen, hey, I've looked this up. I see that these are the kinds of things I want to include in my contract, or these are the kind of things I'm seeing online that I don't really think I need in my contract.
Yeah.
Or, I want to include a cancellation provision, or I want to talk about payment provision, and here's how I want to structure this. But the benefit of having a customized contract is that it's for your business. It's for the way you want to run your business. It's the realities of your business. So, if you take a contract online, it's not going to apply to your industry necessarily.
Right.
So if you, for example, are doing an outlay for labor or for supplies or equipment or anything else like that, that's, 45 days ahead of the event. Well, if you have a 30-day cancellation period, you've already made that outlay before the cancellation.
Right.
So you want to structure timing the way that your business is going to work. You want to make sure, everybody dealt with this in the last several years. What happens if we cancel? What happens if we can't hold this event the way we want to? What happens if we can't provide this service the way we want to? What happens in that event? What happens if we're going to, push it off and we're going to postpone it for a year? Does the pricing change? Another thing that's a great thing that people can put in contracts are the scope of the work. People always talk about this concept of contract creep and scope creep. It started out as one thing and now it's mushroomed and it's become something else, and they're asking for something else and something else. So the scope, when you write it the right way, is a great marketing tool, because it's like, look at all the stuff that I'm providing and look at everything you're getting for the price that you're paying. That's a great marketing tool. The other thing is that it can be written in a way that limits the scope. So we're going to do this. We're not going to do that. We're going to do this, but if it takes longer than this, then here's how the payment structure is going to work. So I think that for lots of people, the scope of work becomes a really critical point within a contract, so that it's written the right way. It is serving the client and serving the customer the right way. And it's really clear. And you don't need to write it every time. If you do very similar work for people, if you're doing, you're staffing events with security personnel, it's not going to be a different contract every time. The price is going to change, the location is going to change, the numbers are going to change, the date's going to change, but you don't have to rewrite the contract every time.
Right.
So if you invest, and like I said, it's not going to be a huge investment. You're not talking about, hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars to get a good working contract in most cases, unless you're talking huge scope.
Right.
But you're going to have a contract that you can use and you can have in your drawer or have in Word, and you're going to make the changes you need. And once you have a good working relationship with an attorney, they can then, you can make that quick phone call. Hey, listen, somebody's asking me about this provision, or somebody wants to change this one, or what do I do here? It's a little bit of a different situation. And it's a quick conversation. It's a quick edit. It's a quick change. And that contract that you have is going to do what you need it to do.
Oh, that's great. Awesome. Fabulous advice. So I love the fact that you're a business owner and you get business owners, you understand what we're going through because you've done it yourself.
Yeah.
So as a business owner and an attorney, tell me about some challenges that you've had, starting your business. And, especially as an attorney, you can probably foresee things a little bit better than most business owners can as well. So tell me about some of the challenges and obstacles you've overcome.
So I think, one of the things that I did, I'll freely admit I did wrong. We definitely had like shiny object syndrome. It was and definitely fell for sales pitches that for things we didn't need.
Right.
And for things that, even if we did need the thing, we might not have needed that one from that company. I think I was definitely drawn in the beginning by, hey, we have this platform that provides this service and you could really use that. I'm like, we could use that. That's a really great idea. Let's go ahead and try that out. I was not discerning enough. We definitely made some costly mistakes there because when you're starting a business, you're going like, oh, somebody's providing a solution for something that I think I need.
Right.
What I should have done is just slow down and say, like, listen, do I need this? And is this the one I need? And if I need this service or I need this product, let me look around to see what other people are offering. If I've decided that I need it, which one do I want? It just shouldn't be the first person who calls. I needed to be a lot more discerning about that. I was just trying to make quick decisions. And I think in some respects, if I had slowed down a little bit, I would have made better decisions, especially when it came to, products and services and software and things like that help the business.
Right.
So, we definitely learned our lesson over the years that you really want to vet all those things. You want a trial period. You want a really good product demo because, you may think it's going to do something and in practice, it doesn't work the way you want it to, or it does exactly what they said it was going to do, or that you thought it was going to do, but you didn't really need it.
Right. Exactly.
I would say that's something that we sort of fell victim to in the beginning. One thing that we did right, I would say, is we kept costs really low.
Good.
And I totally recommend to people. Somebody recommended to me, listen, you've never run a business before, run it like an old lady running her candy store.
Yes.
Like, really close to the vest, really tight on the, on budgeting, and make sure that you know all your numbers because they get away from you and you're making decisions based on gut. You're going like, okay, I need to hire somebody. Okay, well, take it back. How much do you need a person? What person do you need? Is that full-time or part-time? Is how much can you afford to pay that person and what are your expectations? And if they're going to be somebody who's generating revenue, keep a really tight eye on if they're going to be generating revenue for you, make sure they're hitting those targets. If they're doing more of a support role, make sure that they're actually providing that support. But one of the things we did in the beginning was we started with a professional employment organization. So we outsourced all of HR, all of payroll, all of tech. We outsourced all of those things, and they handled all those things for us. Just so we could focus on being lawyers. And then after a while, I was like, okay, now we've got this. We'll take all of that in house. We also started in executive suites, so we didn't have to buy furniture. We didn't have to hire a receptionist. They had a person with a switchboard who could answer our phone as though she was our receptionist. Rosenbaum and Taylor, how can I help you? And the next time the phone rang, it was a switchboard and something else. It's like, ABC Graphics, how can I help you? Or whatever they wanted to say. And that was a great way for us to get started because we didn't have to buy furniture. We didn't have to figure out all the IT. We didn't have to, buy a copier and a coffee machine and and just to have an office that we were wholly responsible for. We could focus on being lawyers. And we outgrew it in a few years, but it was a great way to get us started because it wasn't a tremendous outlay, first of all. It let us focus on what we needed to do. And it also let us kind of get a handle on what we needed to do when we were going to take it in-house ourselves.
That's great advice because I did the same thing and it really changed it for me. Like it was so nice having that professional image without having that upfront investment of copiers and desks and I mean, you brought your computer, but other than that, having a receptionist there, having a beautiful building, and a lot of these are in nicer buildings, and it gives you a great, image without the upfront cost of, a 5-year lease and, all of the build out that you'd have to do. So,
and it can be, and listen, and I recommend it to people because it can be less overwhelming. Because it's just a lot to do. And the to-do list when you start a business is huge. If you can take some of those pieces off the list, that's great. I mean, I think that's a really big help.
Well, and one of the things that I have recognized through the years, and I'm on my third or fourth business at this point, and I've made all the mistakes and I've done all the things wrong, and now like looking back, like I could write a novel on just what not to do in business. So, but one of the things that I think is key is not falling in love with this idea that you have to have a certain image, and we have grace now. Like now, ever since the pandemic, working at home is not a bad thing anymore. Like it's become normalized, and there's less pressure on having to have the big glass building and the fancy office. But, initially starting, those things were lifesaver for me. I thought, going into this beautiful office building, it was great. We actually stayed there way longer than we needed to, just because it was so convenient. But as an entrepreneur, one of the other things that I did is I tried to learn everything. Like I needed to learn contract law. I needed to learn marketing. I needed to learn social media. I needed to learn this. But really, when you step back and you think I think to myself, how many hours could I have been making revenue instead of learning something new that I was only going to be able to do at 20% of what somebody else could do. Even if I threw myself into it and I felt like an expert, I wasn't an expert. And so, but being able to outsource that now, like I tell entrepreneurs now when I coach them, I say, step back. And once you can start hiring people to do things the right way, it's amazing the weight that is lifted off of you because you're no longer stressed about it. You're no longer like, did I do that right? Did I half-ass that? Did I manage to, is that credible? And
right.
You want to just kind of get out of your own way. And that was one of the things that I did as an entrepreneur that I feel like was one of my biggest mistakes is I was always in my own way. I insisted on knowing everything about everything and it slowed me down. I didn't grow as fast. I didn't meet the right people in the right time because I was so focused on learning everything about how to run my business when really there are great experts out there like attorneys that can take so much off of you and ensure that it's done right.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is, and one of the things that I think, I was definitely sort of fell victim to was I can figure it. I can do it myself. Yeah. And you're right. The same way you did, Angela. Like you can. But it's probably not the most productive use of your time.
Right.
So I would say, educate, I would recommend to anybody, educate yourself on, just so you're comfortable. You're comfortable having that conversation. If you don't know anything about social media, you're not going to be as comfortable having the conversation with the social media marketing person you've hired.
Right.
You want to have enough information so you can ask good questions, and then you want to hand it off to somebody who can do it. And I also think you don't have to do everything. You don't have to learn everything right off the bat.
Right.
Kind of, and somebody described it to me as like, jumping off the building and then building your wings as you fall.
Yeah.
It's a little similar to that. It's like, flying in the plane and building it while you go. But you don't have to learn everything. There is an element of, okay, just take the leap. Okay, I'm ready. I know enough. I'm ready to go. But you don't have to do everything on day one. You don't have to have a massive marketing plan on day one. You have to have a product or a service, but you don't have to have a huge marketing plan on day one. You want to set the things that you absolutely have to have and budget accordingly, and then move forward in a methodical way. And obviously at a good pace, but you don't have to learn everything because you're right. It does slow you down when you decide that, before I do anything, I've got to know everything, and that'll get you stuck in the mud quite a bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I tell everybody to try to have a general base level knowledge, have general base level knowledge so that you can ask the right questions, like you were saying, and so that you can also make sure different timelines are met, and I was talking to somebody who ran a tech company and she didn't have a tech background. And so as she learned the terminology and the verbiage that's used, she became better at explaining what she needed, and it was a trial and error. At first she didn't get it right, and the engineers and the software developers weren't getting it right because they weren't speaking the same language. But as soon as she developed that, and she didn't have to know how to write code, she just had to kind of know how to explain what she wanted in a way that they understood. And so it's the same thing with social media. It's the same thing with with law. It's like, okay, this is what I want to make sure, and you want to give your attorney scenarios and say, this is what happened to me. How do I change that in the future by putting it in writing and in a contract? And so the more you can describe what it is that you're trying to get to, the better the experts can do their job.
True. And the other thing is, I think, very few of us are doing something that nobody's ever done before.
Right. Exactly.
So ask questions, and down to like, okay, hey, who do you use for your payroll? Or what bank are you using? If you need to get a line of credit, what bank did you go to? How did you deal with that? Hey, did you apply for this kind of loan? Who did you get your copier from? Do you lease it or did you buy it? Yeah. I mean, anything and everything is sort of available out there. You don't have to sit at your computer and figure it out by yourself. And one of the things I learned probably too late, because I'm one of those people who's like, I'll just do it myself. I can figure it out.
Yeah.
Is that, no one's knocking on my door and saying like, hey, here's some advice I wanted to give you about how to run things. But if you just ask, some people are so willing to share.
Yeah.
So, either whether you find people who are in your industry or people who are in the similar stage of their company as you are, or just people whose opinions you respect, ask them, because they're going to tell you, and you're going to save yourself so much time on Google.
Yeah.
And you're going to save yourself so many mistakes if you just ask those questions.
Mm-hmm. And, along those lines, I would also recommend find your tribe of like-minded people who are doing something similar, because as an entrepreneur, you often feel very much like you're on an island by yourself, and you're like, nobody gets it. The circle of friends that you had at the bus stop with your kids aren't necessarily the same circle of friends you're going to go to and be like, so should I be an S Corp or a C Corp or an LLC?
You can ask, but they may not know.
Right. And so, you want to find your tribe of people and say, what works for you? And it may not be, something that works, but it at least gives you an idea of where to look for the information.
Right.
So find your tribe of entrepreneurs, whether it's through a, chamber of commerce or a networking group, or start your own CEO group. There's tons of them on LinkedIn and Facebook and, but yeah, find your tribe. Find your tribe is what I would tell people.
And you're going to get information from the tribe, but you're also going to get support, because a lot of entrepreneurs feel like islands and feel like nobody's dealing with what I'm dealing with, whether it's staffing problems or HR problems, finance, cash flow, supply chain, whatever it is. Other people are dealing with it too. And I think it feels so good to be like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one dealing with this. No. And somebody may tell you, listen, this is what I did. Like, that's not what I want to do. But they can also tell you, like, these are the things I considered doing before I made my choice. Oh, okay, let me talk to those people. And you start dealing with, resources that have been vetted, and you start dealing with people who have done some of the legwork, and you'll share with them legwork you've done and decisions you've made. And tribe is a great word for it, because it really does help. There's enough work for everybody. Nobody needs to feel competitive with every other entrepreneur out there doing even something similar. Just, but get to know those people, because they're going to be great resources and great sources of support, whether it's networking or connections or just emotional support.
Oh yeah, for sure. I find so much value in my networking groups. I belong to a CEO think tank that's given me so much value, just in terms of the connection, the connection of it's a think tank, you throw an idea out there, and other people will it's like a little bit of a Shark Tank thing where like, this is what I'm thinking. And then 10 entrepreneurs are like, no way, stay away.
And listen, and it happens to all of us. You think you've got the greatest idea sitting alone in your office, and you're like, yes, this is what's going to change the world. And so you're going to take it out there for a spin. And people are like, have you thought about this part of it? Like, oh no, I didn't think about that part. And you need those people, because, listen, everybody is, I think, expert at what they do. Whether whatever service you're providing, whatever goods you're providing, whatever work you're doing, know what you're doing. You know the rules of the road. You know how to do it. That's why you became an entrepreneur in the first place, to do that work.
Exactly.
But when it comes to things that are outside your wheelhouse, don't spin your wheels, no pun intended, trying to figure out what, how to do it, or what to do, or where to start asking people.
Yes. So how has being a mom changed you as a business owner or an attorney? And has it changed you, do you think?
It has. I think, I do a lot of work, obviously, with solopreneurs and entrepreneurs and small business owners. And I started the business before I had my daughter. She's only 3. But I think it's a great age. I think I always knew how important businesses were to families, whether it was supporting a person or a family or a group of families or a community, whatever it was supporting, it was important. And I got that. And I knew that all along, working with all these businesses for 20 plus years. Becoming a mom, though, it became even more clear to me, because now I'm not just helping to support my husband and myself, but I'm supporting my daughter and, there's things that she needs. And the business is important to, to my family, to my business partner's family, to the other people who work here. So if we look, we're a 9-person office. And if I look and say, like, okay, in the immediate families of the people that we support, this business is supporting about 35 people. Wow. And if we look to the communities, obviously it's many, many more. And if we're looking to the clients that we serve and the work that we do, it's many, many more than that. So I think it's really given me a stronger sense of what, the value and the importance of the business and what's riding on the success of the business.
Yes.
Because it's generally, sometimes it is, but it's generally not somebody who's like, hey, I've got this thing on the side I do, and it doesn't matter whether it fails or not. It's really important. It's important to that person. It's important to that family. It's important to that family group. It's important to the community. It's important to the people that they serve. So I think that just becoming a mom kind of gave me a little bit more of a view on that connectedness and on the importance of that. So it fuels me, I think, even more, and it kind of gives me that kind of that softer side when it comes to understanding what people need.
Well, and I wish more people understood that when they go and they are patrons of businesses, that, this is personal for us. It's not just business. When you're a small business owner, it's very personal. And so, you're going to get some things wrong, but what I always tell people is give grace. You have no idea how hard it is. You have no idea how hard it is sometimes to get up on a day you're like, I really need to sleep in, but I'm also short staffed and I also need to go be there for my team. And I also need to figure this out. And we don't get certain luxuries, 2 weeks time off. That sounds amazing. Yeah, it'll never happen. So
people used to say to me, well, you make your own hours. Like, well, you make your own hours. I said, of course I do. I make them longer.
Yes, exactly. What is the quote? An entrepreneur will work 80 hours to avoid working 40 hours for someone else. It's so true.
I think it's true. It's definitely true.
So, but this is, give us grace. We're tired and we're cranky and we've got our life on the lines, like literally half the time.
And I think that's how businesses should deal with each other, and not just customers and patrons and clients and vendors, but these things. I mean, unless most of us are not running big box stores. I mean, most of us and most of us are not dealing on the phone every day with people who are like, take it or leave it. Like, they're your vendor, they're your client, they're your customer, they're your manufacturer, they're your distributor. These relationships are all important.
Super
and
important.
I think that, that's what I hope as an attorney I bring to the table, which is that I understand that, like I said before, nobody wants to be fighting. You don't want to potentially lose your biggest client or your biggest customer or lose a relationship with a vendor who's really important to you. Yeah. You don't want to get that reputation of being difficult or, not paying on time or having rough contract terms or not being willing to work through problems. You want to recognize that these are all relationships and they're all important. And you want, if there's a conflict or there's an issue or there's something that has to be worked through, the goal is to get it worked through so you can get back to running the business. Because you don't want to, we've got enough on our heads. Everybody does. You don't want to have to worry about, this thing sitting on your desk. And that's right, I'm having a fight with somebody. Like, just work through it. If you need to have, an attorney or some other professional work with you to resolve whatever issue it is, whether it's an accounting problem or a real estate issue or a marketing problem, just find people who can support you so you can get back to doing what you love.
Yeah. When it comes to contracts, because I'm definitely not an attorney, but I studied pre-law and I love contracts and I love actually.
You're one of the very few.
I know it's so weird. It's so weird. I took pre-law English for fun because I didn't have to do any English classes in college, and I was like, but I want to. Like, I want to read contracts. It's so weird, but yeah. So I always say, think of it like good fences make good neighbors, good contracts make good vendors, because it's in writing. This isn't personal, it's in writing. This is what it is. Right. Same thing with fences and neighbors. Good fences make good neighbors.
And same thing with co-owners or co-members of a company. Yeah. Management, leadership. The best time to write all that down and get your operating agreement if you need one, or your partnership agreement or membership, whatever kind of agreement you need or you should have.
Get it done and agree. Yeah, set and agree to those boundaries. Yeah, exactly. Set and agree to those boundaries, and that way it's not a personal thing. It's in writing. This is what we agreed to. So.
And the best time to do it is when everyone's getting along. And you want to have it in the drawer or on the computer and pull it out and say, listen, we talked through this. This is what we decided. Right. And you're gonna address all of those things. And like I said, we can go back to look at the contracts online just for some inspiration, and then talk to an attorney about what to put in there. What happens when somebody dies? What happens when somebody doesn't want to work in the business anymore? What happens when we want to bring in a new partner? What happens? How do we break a tie if we're 50-50 owners, and how do we make decisions? Yeah. What happens if we don't agree? What kind of decisions are we entrusting to a particular member or a particular owner? Is it a new direction for the company? Is it a big outlay of capital? What kind of decisions do we need to make together? And what kind of decisions don't require everybody sitting around the table and voting? So if you resolve all those things with, like you said, with your vendors, with your clients, your customers, your co-owners, your employees, your managers, just get all that set ahead of time, get that solid foundation there, and you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah, I love it. Perfect. So kind of to pivot a little bit, who or what inspires you?
I think people who are passionate inspire me. Yeah. People who love, who are doing, People who start something because they really believe in it, or because it excites them, or because they want to make something for their, whether, even if they're in a business that doesn't particularly excite them, but the idea of generational wealth excites them, or the idea of providing for their family or changing their lifestyle excites them. People who are passionate and excited and who are driven really kind of inspire me. Because I've met people who, I know a woman very well who started a job, as an investment banker. And she's like, I was doing really well. I liked what I was doing and I was really good at it, but it wasn't compatible with what I wanted when I wanted to start a family. And I thought I would take some time off and I would kind of figure out what I wanted to do. And she's like, in 6 weeks in, I was like, I don't want to take any more time off. I want to do something. I need to do something.
Yeah.
And she'd always been really interested in the bridal industry.
Huh,
and she now owns a brick and mortar bridal salon. It's really successful. She loves what she's doing. And it's a total pivot from what she was doing before.
Yeah. Yeah.
But those kind of people inspire me. People who really want to find their passion, people who want to pursue it. Like I said, whether it's for personal fulfillment or financial gain or some combination of both, those people get me excited. And when I get those potential clients on the phone, or those clients on the phone who are so excited about what they're doing and just need a little guidance or a little direction, or don't have anyone to brainstorm with, don't have anybody to bounce things off of, I love being that advisor and that strategist with them, because when they're excited about their business, I get excited about their business. And, I kind of I'm nerdy about it, but I just love to learn what they're doing and why they're doing it. And, well, what's the standard in that industry? And, they're only giving you 25%. Well, what's the standard and how should that be? And I get to learn all sorts of industries, and you can tell it kind of gets me all fired up.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love it. So what is one piece of advice that you would give about success that you can share?
I would say define it for yourself.
Okay.
It's something that success isn't the same for everybody.
Yeah.
And for some people, it's like, I want to be in, honeymooning in Italy, and then I want to take a different vacation to a different European city every year. Some people, it's, I want to drive a really big car and I want to have a big house. Some people, it's, I like my life. I want to support my family. I want to feel comfortable, and my lifestyle does not need to be extravagant.
Yeah.
Some of it is, success is, I feel personally fulfilled and I'm helping people, or I'm serving my community in a way that is important to me, and money doesn't matter. So sometimes it's money, sometimes it's personal fulfillment, sometimes it's role in the community. And I think that when you define success for yourself, you want to put those blinders on and not look around at what other people feel is success, or what people may be looking at you and thinking that, you're not successful in the way that they define success. And as long as you're successful and striving for success the way that you feel like it's going to be fulfilling, that's probably the most important thing, because it's not the same for everybody. And, if you don't define it for yourself, you won't know when you get there. Yeah. And you don't want to be striving for something that that's so ill-defined, you're never going to know when you reach it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more with that.
Thank you.
All right. So tell me, as women, we often give our power away. We often say, they helped me to do this, and it's because of my spouse, my boss, my whatever, that we're here. Or you let somebody take your power away through a conversation, through an interaction, and you feel little as a result. You feel belittled. Tell me about a time that you've given your power away, and then tell me about a time as a woman that you've stepped into your power and what made the difference for you.
It's a really good question. I like that question a lot. I would say they're very related. So my business partner was my boss. We've been working together now for 21 years, I think. He hired me. And I was an associate at the firm. He was a partner there, and he built the team, and I was an associate on the team. And I was very successful there. I did well there, but I always felt like, people were looking for him more than they're looking for me. He's got, like I said, 20 years on me. He's much more experienced than I am, and always will be. I can't change that.
Sure.
When we started the firm together, I think I had a little bit of a complex, because we came in as 50-50 partners, and it was a decision we both made together. And it has been a wonderful, wonderful relationship. He is the most loyal partner I could possibly imagine. We've literally never had a disagreement. No one believes me.
Wow.
He is just as supportive as he could possibly be. But I started in the beginning, sort of 10 years ago, sort of having that complex where people are going like, well, what is she doing? Like, what does she bring to the table? Like, and I know, objectively, I know I brought a lot to the table, but he had more experience and he had more connections at the time. And I did not feel as confident in my place and my role in the firm as I think I should have rightfully felt. I thought that people were questioning, like, well, wait a second, why did he pick her as a partner? Why did that happen?
Right.
And it was the most logical thing in the world. I mean, I was a senior associate on the team. We worked very well together. We had very similar goals. Our personalities were very similar. We worked really well together. It makes perfect sense in terms of talent and experience and relationship. It works perfectly. But in the beginning, I didn't feel as confident as I should have rightfully felt because, it's an industry that's very male dominated. He's 20 years older than I am. He's been practicing longer. He's tracked more cases. He's dealt with more clients. And I felt like the relationships that he had were kind of, that I was along for the ride as opposed to kind of driving the train.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think that, so to answer the second part of your question, I think that once I just let go of like, I don't care what people think, I belong here.
Yeah.
I belong here. I've grown this business. I've nurtured this business. I have a lot to contribute. The clients are, I'm serving clients. I'm serving the community. I'm doing a great job, and I have every right to stand tall and be like, "This is my company, and I'm the R."
Yeah.
And that I have nothing to be small about. I have nothing that I have to be ashamed of. Nothing that I have to be timid about, I guess is a good word. That I own my place here. This is my role. This is my firm. Statistically likely that I will be here a lot longer than he will. So what we're building, I'm building, and I'm building for the future, for future partners and for the employees that we have here. And I think that once I sort of just, I eliminated that thought of like, well, are people looking at me and thinking I don't belong here? Because the truth is you don't really have to care what people think, and whether they think I belong here or not, I know I belong here. And I think owning that really changed the power dynamic for me.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that story because you're right. And I think a lot of times we come into any situation feeling like we don't belong because we're so used to being, minimizing ourselves, minimizing our power, minimizing our strength. And women are really bad at owning their success. So, until we really start stepping into our power, we can't expect other people to see that power, right? And so there's just so many on my LinkedIn Pretty Powerful podcast page. I'll often put quotes on there that I think are just really telling. And so and a lot of that is women who step into their power often considered to be, bitchy, or they're just not, but honestly, there's nothing wrong with a woman owning her power and her place in the world.
No.
And so the more comfortable we get with it, the more other people will get comfortable with it. But it takes us owning it first. Right.
I love that. And I think the other thing is I would recommend is share it.
Yeah.
Because there are people around you who need to feel supported and who need to feel that they're empowered. And I think that not only can you be a role model and somebody to look up to and somebody to inspire other people, but when you have the chance, you can affirmatively help. And you can help somebody, work through that feeling of, I'm not sure that this is the right thing for me. Who am I to start a business? Or who am I to run a business? Or, maybe I need share that power and share that inspiration, because if you've learned it for yourself, you can teach it to others.
Yeah. When I was growing up, I grew up in the Northeast, and there was this mentality, at least in the town that I grew up in, where if you did anything good for yourself or better for yourself, or you were trying to lift yourself out of a predicament or a circumstance, there would be two common phrases. Who does she think she is? And she suddenly thinks she's better than everybody. And so, you always wanted to avoid being caught in that. Like, well, I don't want anyone to think I'm somebody special. You were so afraid to be considered different or special because you could be criticized just for that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it took me, I honestly moved away for my own mental, like, I want to be successful, and I don't want to apologize for it every single day. So,
and I think those questions, and listen, if you turn those questions around, they're not bad questions. Who do I think I am? I think I'm a business leader. I'm a business owner. I'm a wife and a mother and a friend and an aunt and a sister. I mean, all of those things.
Yes. Yeah.
And, do I think I'm better than everybody? No, I don't think I'm better than anybody, but I think that I am, I'm improving and I'm getting better every day. And hey, I want you to do the same thing.
Right.
In any way I can support you, give me a call.
Yeah.
I'm happy to tell you, give you some perspective, give you some advice, tell you what I've been through, or just be a sounding board. I mean, I'm often an ear and a shoulder to cry on. So I think that everybody needs that too.
Good. Absolutely. Yeah. So, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Ooh, my 18-year-old self. I like these questions. These are so good. I would say trust yourself.
Mm.
And you don't need to do everything by yourself. I mean, I was definitely like, my parents joked sometimes like, well, you pretty much raised yourself, because I was, I didn't push the boundaries. I kind of stayed in my lane. And I think I didn't plan as well. And I think that I could have had, and my dreams have been great, and I'm happy to be living them. But I think that I didn't at 18 kind of have a plan.
Yeah.
I was going to go to college. I was probably going to go to law school. What was it going to look like after that? Like one step at a time.
Right.
And I think that I could have, I probably should, I know what my advice to probably my 18-year-old self would be to find people who inspired me. I didn't create those relationships with, adults at the time. I didn't reach out to people who were doing the things I might have liked to do at some point and learn from what they were doing, and kind of try to either find opportunities to talk to people or find internships that would be interesting to me, or just expand my world to include, relationships with people who weren't in my immediate family or my immediate friend circle. And I think that those would have been very valuable to me, because I know people who did that at 18, 20, 25, gosh, even 45. And those relationships are so valuable to them because of the perspective that they give and the advice that they can give and the resources they can provide. And I think that would have been really valuable to me going forward.
Absolutely. 100%. I was bad at that. And I think a lot of teenagers are, especially as we're getting into these new generations. Like I find more and more of them are uncomfortable having conversations with adults.
Yeah.
Which, it's unfortunate, because there's so much wisdom to be gained. There's so much that kids can learn if they're just comfortable. And a lot of it, has to fall on the parents. Like the parents need to step up and allow their children to own their own, conversations. Parents don't have to have conversations for their kids with the teachers and the coaches and when my son has a bad grade on something, he has to go talk to his teacher. I'm not calling the teacher. That's not my job. It's not my grade. Same thing.
And I think it's also introductions that parents can make. If your child shows an interest or an aptitude for something, make an introduction to somebody from your community, or somebody from college, or from your graduate school, or from your childhood who might offer something to the child.
Yeah.
I think that information. I mean, listen, all parents think they can do everything. My daughter's only 3, so I'm still learning.
Yeah.
I got a long way to go, and so far she thinks I know everything.
Oh, perfect.
But, if she expresses an interest in a field that I don't know anything about, I'm going to find the people who do and make an introduction for her, probably, a few years from now.
Yeah.
But, so that she can learn from somebody else. I mean, I do it, my business partner came to me and said, hey, my niece is working in, is going to think about working in an area I don't know anything about, I wonder if we can get her in touch with. I'm like, oh, wait, I have a friend. And I think that when you start having those conversations and sharing those things with people, you just broaden that tribe, and you get that tribe even set for your kids early on.
Yeah. Well, and when kids learn how to advocate for themselves, and you're a teenager and you're advocating for yourself and you're growing your network and you're asking the questions, it translates later into life, right?
Oh, yeah.
You start learning, you're comfortable advocating for yourself. And it creates more opportunities for growth at that point,
and more power.
Sheltered.
Right. More power.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So one last question for you, and I've really enjoyed this conversation.
I have too.
What do you wish more people knew? Just in general, what do you wish more people knew?
How much help is available, and whether that's personal or professional. I think that there is, people have a tendency, like I said before, to feel like the problem they're having is either embarrassing, or they're the only ones dealing with it, or they don't really know where to go for help. And that's personal or professional in every area of our lives. And I think that, I've learned so much from just being vulnerable with people and telling people like where my pain points are, or what I'm struggling with, or having just that, and it could be with one of my dearest friends. Or, I've had conversations with clients where, I had a particular client who just didn't sound right one day. And I said to her, like, you okay? And she had recently had a baby. And she said, I don't know. I'm just really, it shouldn't be this hard. I'm crying all the time.
Oh.
And we talked about postpartum depression, which is obviously not part of my job, and not part of my world, but was part of something I dealt with after I had my daughter. And I think that, when you open yourself up to have those conversations with people and share, whether it's professionally what you're working on, or professionally what you're struggling with, personally what you're struggling with, something you're searching for, the more people who you feel comfortable talking to, and the more, trusted advisors and trusted friends you have, the more help you're going to find. And I think that is just so productive and so helpful. for everybody. I mean, I think that that's something that everybody needs to understand, that the help is out there. And if you just ask the right questions and open up to the right people, you're going to find it.
Oh, that's awesome advice. Love it. So thank you so much, Dara. I've really enjoyed it.
This has been a pleasure. I love this conversation. This is great.
Yes. So this is it for our time today. But thank you so much for joining us, Dara Rosenbaum. If you want to find more information about Dara, please go to prettypowerfulpodcast.com. And she is featured on our site as one of our special guests. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. This has been wonderful. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you for joining our guests on the Pretty Powerful Podcast. And we hope you've gained new insight and learned from exceptional women. Remember to subscribe or check out this and all episodes on prettypowerfulpodcast.com. Visit us next time. And until then, step into your own power.